It began as a whisper carried by the humid air of South Carolina, 1839. Two neighboring plantation owners, Elias Dandridge and Silas Crow, stood beneath the sprawling oaks that divided their lands. The world was shifting, whispers of rebellion, emancipation, and madness stirred among the fields. But on that suffocating afternoon, pride outweighed reason. Elias, drunk on arrogance, issued a challenge that would curse his bloodline for generations. "Your strongest slave," he spat through a crooked grin, "against my 5 daughters. Let's see which of us truly breeds strength." The words were half jest, half venom, but the air grew still. Silas didn't laugh. Something old and unseen seemed to listen between the trees, something that fed on human pride. That night, a storm broke across the lowlands. Servants claimed they saw lightning strike the old well at the border between the estates. Others swore they heard laughter echo from within the earth, deep, hollow, and wrong. By dawn, the Dandridge daughters were gone. Their father's estate stood silent, windows open to the wind, doors unlatched, as if expecting visitors. The only trace was a set of muddy footprints leading from the well to the orchard, too large to be human, too heavy to be animal. And on the well's rim, carved freshly into stone, "The wager is done." By sunrise, the Dandridge estate became a scene of confusion and denial. Servants searched the woods, calling the girls names, but their voices only echoed back through the moss-hung trees. The eldest daughter's shawl was found near the orchard gate, torn but unstained. The sheriff arrived before noon, though his eyes betrayed no urgency. Everyone in the county knew the Dandridge family. Their reputation insulated them from suspicion. Elias Dandridge refused to speak of the challenge he had made to his neighbor. He swore it was mere jest. But Silas Crow vanished that same night, his house left in perfect order, supper still on the table, candles burning low. The townspeople whispered that the land itself had swallowed them both. Only one man, an old field hand named Josiah, spoke plainly. "You don't make wagers on sacred ground," he said. "That well ain't been right since the first winter." That phrase, sacred ground, would appear later in county records, scribbled in the margins of an investigator's notes. The handwriting trembled. In 1840, the Dandridge Plantation was abandoned. Officially, the property transferred to the state after unpaid taxes. Unofficially, no one would live there. Cattle refused to graze. Travelers reported hearing women's voices calling from the orchard after dark, 5 distinct tones, harmonizing like a prayer. The land was fenced off. Children were warned not to cross it. But local ministers argued the haunting was divine punishment, a reckoning for what had been done there. Others called it a curse born of pride and human cruelty. A church committee sent a reverend to bless the grounds. He returned after 2 days, pale and silent, his Bible waterlogged as if pulled from a river. He spoke only once before his death. "The well has no bottom." His words were recorded in the church ledger, then stricken out with black ink. Decades later, in 1892, a historian researching forgotten plantations stumbled upon the Dandridge papers, brittle, half-burned, and smelling faintly of damp soil. Among the ledgers of cotton sales and debts, one entry stood apart. It read simply, "The challenge accepted. Payment received." No signature followed. The historian noted that several pages were missing, torn clean from the spine. He traced them to a private collector in Savannah, who refused all access, claiming they contained family correspondence unfit for public record. Within months, the historian disappeared on his return trip. His luggage was found in a Charleston dock warehouse, soaked through with swamp water. His notebook, recovered from his hotel room, contained one line written across an entire page. "The 5th daughter still breathes." By 1910, the state sold off parcels of the old Dandridge property. The family name had faded, but the soil remained poisoned by memory. Laborers hired to clear the orchard unearthed bones, small, symmetrical, arranged in deliberate patterns. The coroner called them animal remains, but one worker quit, insisting he had found a child's braid buried beneath a stone. At night, lights flickered from the direction of the well. Farmers described it as a lantern under the earth. Dogs refused to approach. One local teacher, curious about the legend, visited the site with her students for a historical lesson. Only half the class returned to town with her. The others, she said, had wandered off when she wasn't looking. For years afterward, townsfolk claimed to see 5 children walking the fields at dusk, hand in hand, humming an old tune with no words. In 1923, a new owner, Thomas Gray, began restoration of the plantation house. He intended to build a museum. Workers reported tools vanishing overnight, scaffolds collapsing without cause, and unmarked graves surfacing after heavy rain. Gray, undeterred, ordered the well to be reopened for inspection. It took 3 days to clear the debris. On the 4th, the bucket came up filled not with water but black mud that smelled of rust and roses. Inside the muck, workers found fragments of porcelain, doll faces, all with their eyes scratched out. Gray noted it all in his journal, along with one chilling observation. The bottom of the well pulsed, as if something beneath was breathing. 2 weeks later, his body was found in the parlor, slumped beside the fireplace, eyes open but black as ink. His last entry read, "The debt was never paid." When descendants of Silas Crow resurfaced in the 1930s, they brought with them letters sealed in wax. These were said to be confessions, accounts written by Silas himself before his disappearance. Most were incoherent, filled with pleas for forgiveness and warnings about the voice beneath the well. But one fragment stood out. He thought the wager was a jest, but what he offered was not his own to give. "I heard the song before it ended. I saw what came out of the dark." The letters vanished shortly after. The descendants never spoke publicly again. In 1941, a census official reviewing old records noticed something peculiar. Only 4 Dandridge daughters were listed in birth ledgers. The 5th, Eleanor, appeared nowhere except in Elias Dandridge's personal diary. She was described as frail, rarely seen, and prone to fits of forgetting. Rumor claimed she had died young, though no burial was ever recorded. But in 1943, a girl named Eleanor Dandridge appeared in a mental asylum register in Georgia, age unknown, with no listed family. Her file was classified until 1972. One note survived. Patient hums an old plantation hymn, 5 parts, 1 voice. Refuses to sleep near mirrors. Claims her sisters are still waiting by the well. In 1956, a local journalist uncovered a short film labeled Dandridge Orchard, 1912. The footage showed a decayed plantation, overgrown and lifeless. But in the final frame, faintly visible behind the trees, stood 5 white figures, motionless, side by side. Experts dismissed it as exposure damage, yet when the film was archived, the frame count increased by 1. The final image, unseen before, showed the camera turned inward toward the well, and a hand, reaching out of the darkness. The reel was later reported missing from the archive. The clerk who handled it resigned the following week, citing recurring dreams of soil and breath. In 1964, a traveling preacher delivered a sermon in Charleston titled "The Wager That Broke the Cross." Witnesses described it as haunting, filled with warnings against pacts made in jest. The preacher's name was never recorded, and no transcript survived. Afterward, the church floorboards were found warped, as if from heat. The pulpit wood was blackened, though no fire had been reported. That same year, locals reported an unmarked grave discovered near the old plantation well. Inside, a single rusted locket engraved with the initials ED. When opened, it contained 5 small teeth arranged in a circle. In 1975, environmental researchers tested the plantation's soil for redevelopment. The samples came back with impossible results: traces of mercury, ash, and human calcium deep below the surface layers. Instruments recorded faint vibrations underground, rhythmic like a heartbeat. The data was destroyed before publication. One technician later told a friend, "It wasn't a well, it was a throat." In 1982, the county declared the Dandridge estate a protected historical site, but no tours were permitted. The official reason: unstable terrain. Unofficially, guards reported hearing a woman's voice during patrol, repeating the words, 5 for 1, 1 for none. The phrase became local folklore, etched into graffiti across nearby barns and gas stations. Children dared each other to recite it near the fence line. None ever did twice. In 1994, a private antiquities dealer purchased a chest labeled Dandridge Papers. Inside were 5 hair ribbons, perfectly preserved, though tests dated the fibers as modern. The collector displayed them in a glass case, until his house caught fire. Investigators noted that the flames spread from inside the glass. No remains were found, only ash shaped like handprints. In 2001, a storm caused part of the land to collapse, revealing the old well mouth. Locals claimed a mist poured out for 3 days straight, smelling faintly of iron and lilies. Birds refused to fly overhead. Video footage taken by a local boy shows the mist moving against the wind. Frame by frame, 5 silhouettes emerge within the fog before the camera cuts out. The boy disappeared the next day. A documentary crew attempted to film on-site in 2013. They planned to uncover the truth of the Dandridge curse. Halfway through production, filming stopped. Crew members reported sudden blackouts, time loss, and hearing whispered hymns while reviewing footage. All data was corrupted except one line of narration recorded by the host. They never left. They only learned to wait. In 2018, a descendant of the Crow family published a letter online, claiming his ancestors' sin was not in cruelty but curiosity. Elias Dandridge had discovered an ancient text beneath the Plantation chapel, a ritual of balance between flesh and earth. The wager was no jest, but an offering, meant to bind the old soil to human life. The ritual failed, or perhaps it succeeded too well. In 2020, a researcher tracing asylum records found an audio tape labeled Eerie Interview 1938. The voice is frail but lucid. We sang to keep it calm. The ground was hungry. Father promised it sleep, but it woke instead. I can still feel the breath below. Experts dismissed the tape as fabrication. But frequency analysis revealed something beneath her voice, a second tone, deeper, older, resonating at 18 hertz, the threshold of human hearing. In 2023, construction began near the property for a housing development. The project halted when workers unearthed a ring inscribed, "ED, the wager stands." That night, floodlights failed across the site. Security footage captured movement, not animals, not people, shapes bending like shadows underwater. The next morning, all topsoil had sunk 2 feet. 1 month later, the county received an anonymous envelope containing an old map of the plantation and a single line. If you hear them sing, don't answer. No return address. Postal records show it was mailed from a town that burned down in 1873. Today, the Dandridge and Crow names survive only in archives and whispered superstition. The well remains sealed under concrete, fenced and forgotten. But every year, on the anniversary of the wager, humidity thickens in the Carolina air, and locals report a scent of roses and rust drifting through the pines. Some claim the wager was never truly settled, that human pride once fed something too ancient to name.